welcome again. Good morning, everybody, to our next Talk Design episode. Our guest this morning is Tim Hunt, designer at, and you might correct me here, Tim, I've been saying Survitec, but I was watching some videos of the last week and some say Survitec or Survitec. So you can correct me when you start. And yeah, everybody's in the virtual room, Tim, product design students, and that's why you are here, really. It's an obvious interest to hear what you're doing and what practicing designers do and how they do it. And I'm going to avoid all the niceties, so welcome and dive straight in. I know you've got slides prepared for us, so tell us who you are, what you do, and talk to us about Survitec. Thanks, Tim.
Okay, so yeah, thanks, Preda. And yeah, you're right. Survitec it's the combination of survival and technology. So Survitec. Yeah, as you've already said, my name's Tim Hunt. I'm a product design engineer with Survitec. I've been there for just over 2 years now. So a quick whiz through. Originally called RFD. Started in 1850s and sort of onwards, really. So Reginald Foster Dagnall is where RFD comes from, and has always had a history in inflatables, either rescuing equipment or rescuing people. As you can see the timeline up on the screen, working through the world wars and then pushing through into other markets like the cruise industry and stuff with that marine evacuation system, which is now where I fit in. I'll sort of come back to that later. I won't press too much on the history. If you want to have a look, take a peek. They've got a big virtual museum up at the moment because it's our 100th year of being buoyant in survival. What I've learned along the way. Your opinion's valuable. It's difficult at times as a new starter or in a role that you might feel is less important, but remember that your opinion is still valuable. You're probably looking at it from a different perspective because you've got different training, you've got a different background, whatever it is, you've got a different opinion. So be sure to try and make it heard and make it heard so that people understand. And that's difficult, but very good to do. You don't know until you've tried something. Like I said, I had no idea about how to high frequency weld fabrics together, what coating was, what denier fabrics were, any of that stuff. But you've got to give it a go. You've asked questions along the way. People are more willing to help out than you'd imagine. On the back of that, I suppose, is remember to be nice. You never know when someone might help you out or when you might need some help or what they're up to that day. You've got no idea what's going on. So just try and make sure you're being nice. It gets a long way, I think. I suppose the other thing I've found a lot is having spent the time at Bangor Uni focusing a lot on creative process or design process. Actually, unless you're in a team of designers, that's not readily understood. So communicating that and getting people along the journey can be quite tricky. And that's perhaps because they haven't done it before, perhaps because they don't understand a bit. So just take the time to bring them along with you. Make sure they understand the process. Do try and explain it because that's what they need, I think. So those are the main, key things I think I've learned since starting. Then this is probably a familiar sight to everyone now. It's something I didn't think I'd be seeing much of until recently, that move to online and how that works with teams of people in different locations and everything else. So I think a couple of key things I've found. Creativity is tricky when you're not face to face. It's doable, but yeah, it's difficult. Find things that work. Also, if it's not working, don't worry about it. And that I think leads into the right task and the right time. So give people a task they can do. Also think about if the task needs to be done on a call with a group of people, or if it could be taken away separately and then brought in again. And then the right time, give people enough time to do something, but not too much time that it wanders off. So plan your time out. I say that now, I'm probably going to waffle on for ages, but so yeah, right task and right time. Give people enough time, but not too much, because if there's too much, it wanders off and people get lost. And currently, in my job role, really, we're using a lot of traditional collaboration stuff, shared sketching, talking through ideas, running comparisons, general conversations, really. I suppose something that's not on here that has been a bit of a benefit is we've almost gained some time because we're not traveling to meetings. The shot I showed you before, top left, he's in Scotland, in Aberdeen. Middle photo, he's Liverpool. Middle bottom is Gosport. Right hand side bottom is not sure, down south somewhere. So we're scattered all over the country. We've also got calls, as you imagine, through different offices. So we're all over the place, really. So I think it saved a lot of time in that respect. And once you've got set up, it's quite a lot easier. You can have spend a bit of time getting comfy, having the right things in front of you so you can make life easy, really. So that is pretty much it, folks. With a bit of time for questions and things.
Cool. Thank you very much, Tim. Yes, I have got questions, and as always, if people have got questions, please pop them in the chat. Do you want to stop sharing, Tim, and then we can see you? So again, thank you very much, because it's kind of like perfect for what I hope these chats are going to be. We just get a glimpse and insight into what designers actually do, rather than the kind of the Instagram all glossy, all renders type of work, because it's probably not what majority of designers actually do. So right, so while we're waiting for the questions to come in, I'm gonna ask, Survitec, it's a big company. I think, over 3,000 employees, 8 manufacturing facilities, international presence in 96 countries. This is all on the website. Brilliant website, by the way, and a great legacy as well. And if you haven't been on it, go and have a look, people. I think, first in designing, first gas operated life jackets, first life jacket with emergency breathing system, first full coverage anti-G suit, and on and on and on. Okay, which can be a bit daunting, I'd imagine. So were you aware of the size of the company and the products that they were brought to markets before you started? And did that kind of excite you or scare you? And then what was it like joining a big company, a big established international company like that?
So the first question there about Survitec, no, I'd never heard of them. I had no idea who they were. I got the job through an agency who did a fantastic job of finding it and matching me up and doing all the groundwork. So no, I had to do some Googling and then found out, much like Fred has already read, all the information and just how massive they were and what they did. I suppose a key pointer for me was the facility that we were in, where it was a lot of big open space, the ability to prototype hands-on, be there and have a go at stuff, with a workshop and a couple of machinists and things available. So that was a big draw for me. The physical workshop space was really good. And then the product, the ability, I think I said it in my interview, actually, I'd never really considered that someone has to design stuff to save lives. And that was quite a big draw, actually. It was something I wouldn't have thought of. So when you look back and join the dots, it becomes obvious, but actually at the time wasn't at all. So joining the big company, definitely the biggest organization I've ever worked in. There's a big learning curve there. I've spent a lot of time in smaller teams with quite more direct routes to answers or whatever it is you need. So there was quite a change there. But on the flip side, having a big organization, there's a lot more support there, and a lot more going on, really. So I don't know so much if it was daunting, because I was so involved in trying to learn and get up to speed as you would be with any new job. I'm not sure I probably still aren't aware of just how big it is, because you're in a day-to-day team that's reasonably small. If that answers the question.
Yeah, and in terms of those teams, because there's a number of different departments, and can imagine, you've got like the engineering or the testing or the materials, and there's a number of specialists everywhere, really. So I don't know, how many of the designers would they set up a team specifically for a project, and how many designers involved, and what's, how closely aligned are the different departments, or is it kind of a as and when in terms of product development?
So the department I first moved into was specifically for new product development. So within that department, we had 4 designers, 2 consultants, and a couple of machinists. So that was that small workshop. And that was set off to one side, and we functioned separately, very much so, quite separate in the development process. It was only when a product was being moved through the stage gate system and was making its way into production, then we'd have a much more, we'd have a lot more interaction with the production team. So within production, they've also got design engineers and production engineers. So in that office, there's probably half a dozen design engineers, but they were looking at the legacy product. So they're making incremental changes to product that's currently out in the field. I suppose what's a quirk with Survitec is the length of contract for product. So we're looking at sort of 10 to 20 year contracts, because they're going into specific aircraft. They've also got to go through a huge amount of testing, with probably close to £1 million of product in terms of total test costs. So you can't change that easily or quickly, because you'd have to retest. So that's another separate department. So we'd link in with them, as I said, when we're moving into production. Also, there's the test house. So if we're doing, as I sort of said earlier in the slides, if we're doing any testing where we need to use their test machinery, we'd be integrating with them. So we had quite a close link, as I sort of pushed to, with the amount of testing we do, there's quite a close link with testing. They were also able to give us a really good knowledge on materials and expected behaviors and things. And then, yeah, that was probably the majority of the close links we have. And then obviously there's a lot of siloed working in terms of marketing and sales and things. You'd have some crossover, but very much separated out.
I'm gonna, well, the questions come in from Aled, and I know there's all kinds of noises going on in the background of the workshop, so I'm probably gonna ask on Aled's behalf, really. It's a good question. Is it fun working on top secrets projects?
Yes and no. Yes, it's fun because it's they're exciting and they're the bigger projects, and you're really pushing towards the future, and you're really future focused, and able to, like I showed, kind of test and prototype and do all that exciting stuff. They're less exciting when you have to go through an NDA process with every single supplier you might find or purchase you try and do. And also with the setup we have, getting a new supplier on board is potentially a 4-week process. So you're often trying to find routes around things. So you're not necessarily anyone's friend at any point. So that's the less exciting side of it.
Thanks, Tim. We've got another good question. I'm going to ask Jack. Do you want to ask this question? Let's have a different face on screen, because it ties in with the conversation, really.
Hello.
Morning.
How are you doing?
Good, thanks.
Good. Thank you for talking to us. This is a great opportunity to get kind of an insight into working for a big company. I suppose that's quite a, I think that's going to be a goal for a lot of us on this course. But my question basically revolves around the testing process. When, let's say, you do, for example, the test on the ramp on the ship, you have that failure of the, I forget, the walkway blocks.
Yeah.
Call them. What does the back to the drawing process look like when a test kind of doesn't give you the answers you wanted?
Good question. So I suppose that would start with how big the failure was.
Right.
Because so actually what you saw on the forklift wasn't a failure. That was not expected, but it was within the parameters that we were happy with. So how bad the failure was would determine how much we go back to the drawing board. If it's sort of expected and it's a design tweak, that's not too bad. Kind of single designer can probably carry on with that, or engineer. If it's a large scale failure, you probably considered bringing in the team again. So on that project, we've got a closer team of about 5 or 6 engineers. So I'd reach out, ask for some help. Then that process could be a fair few steps back to concepts again, or if it's severe enough, it's a change of material, or total rethink. So for that one, that is probably iteration 7 or 8 of it, and they're wildly different, from inflatable to telescopic to collapsible. We've had all manner of things. So there's been a lot of back to the drawing board with the team on that.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Martin, do you fancy asking your question? You've got a 2-parter. So I think.
Hi, yeah, sorry, I got millions of questions. I just tried to limit myself a little bit. I suppose I was curious about deadlines in this line of work, because I know more often than not, deadlines tend to be quite strict when it comes to designing things. But if you're working in the safety side of things, you need to take your time to make sure you get things right. There's no really rushing it, is there? So I was just wondering, how does that work with you guys?
So it's often a balancing act between meeting sort of if it's a sales type demand, we'd have something there where they'd have an understanding of how quickly we need to get it to market. So that's one driver. The other driver would be whether it's a big development project. So in terms of if we're going super wildly different, or if we're making a small change. And that would be led by us. So we try and indicate through planning how long we would need. Then those deadlines would invariably alter, going back to what Jack said, depending on testing. So we'd have certain tests. We'd start with probably the biggest impact tests and then make our way through. So if we know we've passed a tricky test, the rest should be easy enough. So that gives you an idea on if you're on track or not.
So a lot of it depends on testing then, which is going to bring me to the next question of whether or not you guys do your testing in-house or you contract them out.
So that depends on the type of test. There's certain equipment we've got in-house that we can do, and stuff that we can't do. So I guess the basics are load testing. Mostly we can do in-house up to a certain point. We can't do any fire testing in-house. We can do water repellency and stuff like that in-house. Some chemical testing in-house. So our in-house test site has certain certification, so that then meets what we need for the product to make it to market. And obviously we'll look for those certificates. If we don't have them, we'd have to outsource that.
Brilliant. So does that mean you'd have the people carrying out the tests, is that in-house as well, or would that be contracted in?
Again, depends. So the guys in the test department can carry out the tests that they're certified for. Other than that, it goes outsourced.
Oh, brilliant. Do you guys have to incorporate sustainability amongst in all this design work?
Yes. It's a tricky one. It's always a consideration. We've got a really difficult market, I suppose, because as you said, it's safety products. So we need to make sure it works first and then try and consider the sustainability. So actually what we're more leaning towards is the lifespan of the product. So if we can make the total lifespan longer, then we should be making the better use of resources.
Yeah, definitely. I noticed like when it comes to like a lot of safety equipment, they put a lifespan on that equipment, say after 5 years you must replace it. Do you guys, is that an issue with sustainability and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so what we would actually do is we tend to have each product has a service life. and we would bring it in after that and either repair it, or depending on its state, potentially it can be repaired. So the bigger stuff like the life rafts, they've got stuff out there that's like 15, 20 years old, but it still functions and we can still repair it. A lot of the types of equipment perhaps you've seen that have got a 5-year life on them is actually from a warranty or a guarantee point of view, because it's been manufactured, the manufacturer has liability, so they have to put a line in the sand at what point their liability ends.
Oh, definitely. I was thinking like on lines like safety ropes and harnesses and all sorts of stuff like that, because they're actually quite strict on it. They say to bin your harness if it's 5 years old, regardless if you used it every day or not. So I was just thinking about if
I could kind of see what you're picking at there. And yeah, again, it's that liability thing. They've got no idea if it would be okay or not, what you've done with it, so they've just got to draw a line in the sand.
Does that make you, like, as a designer, does that make you responsible for noting that stuff down in your designs?
Not from the design perspective. That's more the materials side of things. So the materials engineers or mechanical engineers would be the ones determining what the expected service life is.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, thank you. That's all I've got for now. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Cool. Thank you, Martin. And thank you for those answers as well, Tim. A lot of it really is, there's a lot of process involved, isn't it, in what you're doing and what the engineers are doing and the testing. So, and you alluded to it earlier in terms of that creative process. So again, this is another question that's come through from Ale. How tough is it getting engineers and others to understand the design process that you're working to and the benefits of that process?
Depends on the engineer. Some of them find it quite refreshing to have that process to follow and will happily walk through you with it. Other engineers will just want to engineer, I suppose. They just want to look at the material and the construction method and stuff. So I've had I think I'm probably the one that's often sat around the table reminding folks that it needs to be used by a human, and we need to keep focusing on where they fit in and how usable it is. As I said, some conversations are trickier than others, but I think we've made breakthroughs and we're getting there a lot better.
Thank you. I think something that crops up in conversation with students quite often is that they're feeling that they do not feel that they are ready for particular roles, especially after graduating, and it's a kind of a not an awkward but unsure time really when you're graduating. So I don't know, have you felt a bit out of your depth at times, and what would you say has been the biggest challenge you faced so far? And any wise words obviously to our students in the room.
Yeah, so I think you never feel as ready as you want to, and that goes through no matter what you're doing really. Like, that started in my career outside of design in the outdoor industry. You're never feeling as ready as you could be. I don't feel as ready as I could be right now, and this is definitely a bit of a challenge, chatting to 40 people and trying my best. So I suppose it's that biggest challenges, like I was saying, is working with stuff that you're not sure about, trying to ensure you communicate what you want and ask the right questions. Yeah, pretty big challenge was that the gangway type walkway projects where there's a lot of really quite difficult engineering going on, and that's way out of my comfort zone. I mean, I can understand it and talk about some of the right terminology, but I definitely I couldn't pretend to understand it fully. So just being humble about that and explaining, but trying your best. I don't think anyone can fault someone for trying their best. So yeah, there's been some tricky bits there.
And on the flip side of that, what would you say is your not possible greatest achievement, or the greatest project, or the thing you've enjoyed most, that you're most proud of?
I think there's a couple of things I'm quite proud of. One of them actually is background a little bit to Alad's question, is that getting a bit more process involved and documenting and getting the team to make steps together, communicate, and get ideas away from people's. I read something the other day. You've got to have a team that are happy to call each other's babies ugly. You've got to be able to have that open dialogue and remember that you're talking about a thing. You're not talking about the person. And that's difficult. And I think the team's got much better at doing that now. I guess I'd like to take a bit of responsibility because it's the process that I was trying to push in the design side. Also, another little one is just in the facility. So the prototyping facility for the big marine kit is it wasn't very well developed. So there's a lot of process changes there that have made little incremental changes that have helped things along the way. And that's quite nice to see that I've done something and it's working.
Cool, thank you. Is Dewi there? And I know he's coming and going. Does Dewi want to ask his own question?
Sorry, I'm here. How have you found testing and prototyping through COVID? Just not having access to the site, or?
Okay, we're having trouble hearing, but I think the question relates to have you carried on testing, or how have you done the testing during COVID?
Okay. Yes. Yeah. We've still been in and out of the office during COVID. What we've done is probably much the same as the approach you've seen at uni, socially distanced wherever possible, and then taking all the PPE precautions and things. With that project, it's been quite lucky because it's massive, and we're in a massive warehouse. So actually, we weren't that close together anyway. I guess a flip side, the benefit is, like you can see today, when I'm in the office kind of mode, I can be at home. There's no commute. There's no stress about that. I'm quite lucky. I've got a nice office set up here, so actually, it's all right.
Then I don't know if you can do this, but on the time management front, you were talking. How do you personally manage your time?
Not very well. So I've actually got a little matrix set up, which I think you introduced us to, Predo, which is the important, urgent, unimportant, urgent type grid setup. And that's a bunch of what they call stickies. They're like the digital Post-it notes on my desktop in the top corner, and that's just sat there, and that's how I try and get things out of your head and make sure you're doing the right stuff. Then it's a management of what tasks can be run in parallel. So there's some stuff that you can kick off and then leave because someone else has got to deal with it, whether that's a supplier or another colleague. So get that done, and then you can work in the space in between as such. But no, it's tricky. I don't think anyone finds it easy, but yeah, the matrix and sticky notes, digital sticky notes, because I lose physical ones.
Cool, thank you. Our time is kind of drawing to a close, so if any students have got another question, pop it in the chat, please. Dewi's showing the merchandise off as well. But I don't know, last question probably from me. Everybody's adapting to the online thing, the distance learning, and I totally agree with you. Some bits I found to be so much better. Some bits I just want to tear my hair out because I just feel that it's not working. So any top tips again to us as staff or students that you've learned, so that that you wouldn't pass on, or how important do you think that online working is going to be in the future? Because when COVID comes to an end and things get back to normal, can you see the company going back to completely the way it was, or will they be adopting some of the new processes?
So I guess talk in the office is that actually perhaps up to 30% of people wouldn't need to be in the office full time as we were before, because there's been no change in productivity or role type. I think it's, as I said before as well, with the meetings, it's helped a lot. We don't need to spend days traveling places when we can jump on calls, and actually that's well set up and accepted now, which is a benefit. It'd be good to keep that as much as we can, partly from the sustainability side of it. Like, we were flying people all over Europe on a daily basis, twice daily basis, which is bonkers.
Yeah.
So doing it in a digital format makes a lot more sense. Top tips, reach out to people, ask for help. I was amazed at the help I got from what I felt like was seemingly acquaintances opposed to friends, and actually reached out for some help and got some amazing response. Also, remember to get out and about. It's very easy to spend the whole day in the house if you're working from home. So remember to get outside. See, even if it's grim, like it is in Wales quite often, it's good to get out and about. And just stick to sensible work times. And there's only really you to manage your time. So be honest with yourself. If you've put enough effort in, great. If it's not working, don't worry about it. Put it down and come back to it. There's no harm in that.
Wise words, and that's a slap in my face. It's like, you know the words, but it's like, you just don't do it either, do you?
Yeah.
Right, last question to Dewi. Dewi's got a question. It's a surprise question even for me.
Yeah, sorry. Can you actually hear me? Not sure
Very faintly.
Is it faint? Can you hear me?
Just about.
Okay, right. Yeah, quick question, Tim. I know that you joined us later because you have sort of experiences prior to joining for the course. Basically, and I know sometimes that you were looking at some of the processes that we were going through with graphic design toolkits and things, and I felt on occasion that you were sort of almost hoop jumping because you'd already had a fixed mindset as regards to where you were going in the project. And if you can, and that's no criticism at all. I'm just thinking, how has design theory and working through sort of a design process really helped you, do you think? How much do you sort of rely on that? How much do you fall back on that stuff, or is it getting more and more intuitive?
I think it almost surprised me how intuitive it was at times. And yeah, definitely the process stuff has helped massively. And having spent a lot of time and experienced the process through the project work at uni has helped, because it becomes sort of second nature. It's that muscle memory almost of, well, this is what you would do first, and this is next, and this is next, and it becomes obvious. So then explaining it to someone, you realize actually some of the guys haven't seen this before, and it's a total breath of fresh air. So yeah, that's been really valuable, and I think that's one of the biggest skills that's come through into the team for where I am at the moment.
Thanks, Tim.
Welcome.
Cool. Tim, so thank you very much. There's so much information there to digest. I want to go back and watch the recording straight away. But thank you very much for your time. Thank you everybody for your questions, and I'm going to stop recording now.